weeks ago, my best friend's mom reached out and asked if I could make her daughter, my best friend, a bag for Christmas. But here's the catch. She already had the fabric picked out. It was going to take a few weeks to get to me, and she had no idea what bag she wanted for her. So, over the last few weeks, I've been researching to try and figure out which bag she would like the most, and I finally have the fabric in hand. But I'm running out of time, so let's get started.
For the exterior, I chose a nice navy waxed canvas. It's pretty rugged and really fit the look I had envisioned. The interior is going to be lined with a cotton woven fabric. It will require interfacing to make it structured enough for a bag. I found that rough cutting the cotton and interfacing prior to fusing it together allows for any shrinking of the fabric. Then, once fused, the template pieces can be used to cut the fabric for the exact shape needed. A rough cut is essentially just pre-cutting the fabric pieces a tad bigger than the final piece. For the odd shapes, I used pattern pieces. For the rectangles and squares, I used a ruler. The extra large ruler from More Me Know is a game changer. Now I'll take all the fabric pieces and cut the interfacing to the size of the rough cut fabric. This interfacing is a lightweight woven material with tiny little glue dots on the back that will adhere to the cotton fabric with a little bit of heat. The wax canvas has a bit of structure on its own, but I wanted to add foam to the outer pieces to make it sturdy. On the interior, there's a slip pocket wide enough for a tablet or small computer, so I'll add a piece of foam there too for extra padding. This foam has the ability to adhere to the fabric with heat, but the wax canvas doesn't allow it to stick, so I'll just stitch that on in a minute.
So we've got all of our exterior, our lining, and our interfacing rough cut. Now we need to work with that special fabric she sent. She sent it specifically because it features these two dog breeds. So as I was going through and seeing what area would be best, I realized there's only one spot in this entire yard of fabric that we can use with these two dogs next to each other. So because of that, we created an acrylic template to be able to line up these breeds exactly. Get it as perfect as we possibly can, since we only have this one shot. Maybe kind of hard to see on camera, but it's looking about perfect. So I want to rough cut around this piece of fabric here. Because we're using a cotton fabric, now I need to add all the interfacing to it so that it's stiff enough for a bag.
Each cotton piece needs to be wrinkle-free, so I'll run the iron over it first to smooth everything out. With the fabric face down, I lay the glue side on top of it. I'm using a handheld heat press that allows me to control the exact temperature and has a built-in timer. Think of it like a square iron. I add a little bit of pressure for the 10-ish seconds and move on to the next area. Then I repeat for the bajillion more pieces. Most of the time, getting everything ready to sew takes the longest time. So I'll usually get everything ready the few days before, and this also gives the glue time to completely set to the fabric and dry.
Now that I have all my cotton pieces interfaced, I can fussy cut my flap, get that perfect, and finish cutting everything else down to its correct dimensions. The last step of our prep work is to add our foam interfacing to our exterior body pieces. So we need to stitch those on in the seam allowance, and then we need to add our magnets to our flap and our main body, and then add our name tag.
Like I mentioned before, we can't adhere this foam to our exterior wax canvas pieces, so I'm just basting those on. And basting is just using a longer stitch length to tack those on at the edge of the fabric. Before I assemble the front pocket panel, I need to add my nameplate. I have a little metal bracket that I'm using to measure where it's going to go, using a craft knife to cut those holes and stick the prongs into the fabric. I need to add a piece of interfacing on the back side just to give it a little stability and keep it from pulling through. I'm bending the prongs back on that bracket to keep everything in place, double check to make sure it's straight, and now we can move on to adding the magnets. The magnets are on the main body panel, and this is what the flap will attach to. Use the brackets that come with each magnet to mark our holes, push them through the fabric, add the stabilizer to the back, and then our metal bracket. Just like we did for the nameplate, push those prongs down and add a little bit of tape for security. Now we need to add the other half of the magnets to the lining side of our flap. So this is going to be underneath the flap that folds down and connects to the main body. And we're just repeating what we did for the other side. Add the brackets, add the tape, and double check that it all lines up.
And now for the fun part, let's assemble the bag.
I wasn't kidding when I said planning and prep work takes up a huge chunk of bag making. I mean, I'm probably on day 3 or day 4 of actually getting everything ready before I could even start sewing. I started with the most important part, the flap, in hopes that if I got it out of the way first, it would be smooth sailing the rest of the way. And if I didn't, then I had time to troubleshoot. These pinking shears create teeny tiny little triangles that are simply magical on curves. The little triangles allow the fabric to lay perfectly around that corner, so when I top stitch, it's perfection. Moving right along, I start working on the exterior pockets. Yep, 2 pockets. She loves pockets. This one's a slip pocket just under the flap, and then there's a zipper pocket on the back side. Earlier this year, she helped me design this made-you-look sew-in tag for a retail shop, so it was just too perfect, and I had to add it. This bag has 2 D-ring connectors on each side to attach the crossbody strap. I stitched those on each side panel before attaching the base, making a complete gusset panel. The gusset is the middle that attaches the front and the back pieces together and is by far one of the most intimidating parts of bag making. It's not too terrible, but you must make sure you line up the middle points and your top edges first. Then you can work the rest of the fabric around the corners and add clips. Add lots of clips. Bonus points if they're glittery. No, but seriously, they will be your best friend. Now I'll stitch the first side on. Careful when you get to the curves. If you're a 90s kid, just like the song, nice and slow. And please, don't stitch your fingers. Use hemostats to help hold the fabric in place. No one needs a hospital bill. Then I do it all over again for the other side. The clips are back, and there are a ton of them. I truly don't think you can have too many. Then just take those curves nice and slow and keep my fingers out of the way.
So I have my exterior shell now fully stitched, so we need to flip it out so that it's the right side out. Straighten everything out, and now we can set this aside and work on our lining.
The interior is spacious, roomy, and again, has lots of pockets. So tell me, can you even have too many pockets? What do you even keep in your pockets? One side is a zipper pocket and a divided slip pocket, so I made sure to give her 2 dedicated spots for her pretty pins. The other side is going to have the padded tablet pocket that I mentioned earlier. The tablet pocket has a little snap tab to keep it from falling out. I drew out rounded corners with the smallest, roundest, closest item I could find, a little screwdriver I keep by my machine. I stitched down the line I drew on to make sure it didn't get wonky. When stitching such a small little curve, you want to use a smaller stitch to keep it from getting pointy. I snipped some teeny tiny triangles and then wrestled this little thing, turning it right side out. In hindsight, using a blow dryer usually helps soften the fabric, making it easier to turn, and I should have just done that. But I didn't. So I just fast forwarded through it for you and saved you about 15 minutes. Using my handy little chopstick, I poked out all the corners, making it nice and pretty. I also spent way too much time making sure this fire hydrant was perfectly lined up for this tab, but it was so worth it.
So I'm working on our second lining panel, and we want to attach metal snaps to our tablet pocket. It'll have a little flap that secures everything in here, so we're going to go ahead and add those now.
There are many different types of punch tools. This one is a handheld with a variety of sizes available with the turn of a dial. The snap can be set with hand tools or by using a press.
I'm back at the machine and we're going to finish assembling the lining.
Here I'm adding the tablet pocket, and there really isn't much left after this. I'll need to add the gusset panel to both the lining sides and then just finish it up. But somewhere between this step and the next step, I stuffed the lining into the exterior, stitched it together, then completely turned it right side out through a teeny tiny interior zipper pocket. But, well, the footage is never to be found. Let's be honest here, I probably never hit record. In my defense, it was 12:15 a.m. She would expect nothing less than me finishing in the wee hours of the morning the night before I had to ship out to meet the USPS holiday shipping deadline. But now, I'll hold my breath as I take the last trip around this bag and stitch the final top stitch, the one she'll look at daily, and I'm sure examine for wobbly stitches soon as she gets it. Totally kidding. She would never. I have no idea how I've been able to keep this a secret for so long, but I have. And now I must wait. Somehow, these last few days in transit seem to be the longest ever. Will it get lost? Will she like it? Will she use it? Surely she will. Right?